Hi, my name's John, and for those of you who aren't familiar, I'm working on getting my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. And so today, I wanted to take a look at one of the most interesting characters from Fire Emblem Three Houses, Martritiz, and how we can use the Myers-Briggs type indicators ideas to kind of get a little bit more context as to who she is and what her personality is. So, if you like this kind of content and you want to see more of it coming from this channel, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and why not even ringing that notification bell so you never miss another upload. And while you're at it, why not sharing this video wherever you like sharing things? But with all that out of the way, let's just jump into the video. If you're not familiar with the Myers-Briggs type indicator, it's a tool that can be used in a lot of different ways within a counseling setting for non-diagnostic purposes. In essence, the Myers-Briggs helps define the generality of people's personalities, and it's not meant to be a holistic definition that defines every piece and dynamic of an individual's personality and who they are as a person, but it does provide an amazing outline. For instance, when it's used within the realm of counseling, the Myers-Briggs personality types could be utilized as good starting points to give someone an added opportunity to better begin understanding themselves if they have trouble with this sort of introspection. And so this test is based on the four basic aspects of an individual's personality, which are where people get their energy from, how they interpret information, how they make decisions, and how they personally like to structure their outside worlds. And once these aspects are determined through taking the official assessment, we can see that individual's personality type. But since we can't actually give Martritiz the genuine test, let's have some fun and try to riddle out what her personality type would be if she were to take it. And where better than to start than with the first dichotomy, introversion versus extroversion. Now, Martritiz on paper seemed hard to pin down because while in all of her support conversations, she seems rather pleased to be speaking with whomever she's talking to, for the most part, we need to find some of the more underlying meanings in her behavior. And I think that there are a number of places throughout the course of the game where we can find these underlying meanings. While Martritiz is undoubtedly a kind and wonderful human being, great at working with and caring for her classmates, does this mean that she's inherently extroverted? Well, no, not at all. Because when it comes down to it, it doesn't matter whether Martritiz likes or dislikes being around people. It's where she draws her energy from that matters. This is fairly easy to deduce as many of her support conversations begin as she's alone in the church praying. We can see her explicitly state to Dimitri in their A support that she loves how quiet the cathedral is at night, alluding to the fact that she comes here often when no one else is present just to have alone time between herself and the goddess. The time she takes to reflect on her ideas. In this conversation, reflecting on those they've lost and hoping they are now by the goddess's side is a trait that can be hugely indicative of introversion. What really sealed the deal for me in the decision that she is likely more introverted in nature was her C support with Ferdinand, where he not only points out that Martritiz is typically alone, which she agrees to, but then this happens.
Precisely. Where are the others? Of course you cannot force people to worship. That is out of the question. Nobles must determine for themselves what they will believe and how they will pray. A religion foisted on you without your say is not much of a religion at all. Do you not agree?
Yes, I definitely agree. Definitely agree.
On the other hand, we cannot stand idly by while...
It was great talking to you, but I'm getting pretty sleepy. I'm gonna head off to bed. Good night.
While this could just be read as Martritiz making any excuse to escape Ferdinand's presence at all costs, I think that it's likely that interacting with him really did tire her out a lot. We can see that as she talks in this clip, she lost a bit of steam before saying she's sleeping and making her getaway. I do want to stress though that this is likely because Ferdinand isn't someone she's comfortable with in this first interaction. I think that society has created a strange stereotype surrounding introverts that they don't like being around people in general, which is a humongous and oftentimes untrue generalization. Social interaction just isn't how they recharge their batteries like it is with extroverts. Mercedes tends to take a bit more time to open up to people and seems to harbor a smaller and more hand-picked circle of friends that she keeps around her. While she's incredibly comfortable with her best friend Annette, she clearly needs a lot more time to warm up to people like Ferdinand and especially Lorenz over the course of all of their supports. But if we're going to decide that she's an introvert, I guess the next question is, how does she interpret information? Well, let's be honest, Mercedes isn't really one to make decisions based on hunches or theories. An individual within the intuitive type will oftentimes think through a problem thoroughly and recognizes the meanings and patterns of the information they consume. Mercedes, on the other hand, is much more concerned with the information that is occurring in the present moment. This very practical and hands-on aspect of her thinking through issues in the moment can be seen clearly in her B support with Ferdinand as she intervenes with the two knights who are arguing over the sale of a sword. She notices the knight who owns the sword doesn't seem to want to sell it all too much and immediately takes action based off of what she was able to observe through their interactions. This ability to trust her gut, gather the facts of the situation before she has the full picture, and work out what's actually happening in the present moment is a clear indicator for me that she tends to be more of that sensing type. Though, if you're not convinced yet, another premium example of her relying on her senses and the present moment have to be when she's cooking with Ash in his B support. Even though she makes a mess of the kitchen and the two of them had to clear out everyone in the dining hall, she's insistent to learn from her mistakes and even starts throwing out ideas of what went wrong in her cooking so that she can learn from this failure and ensure that she can improve for next time. She takes all of the facts of this incident and puts them together to see that bigger picture, which is again highly indicative of that sensing type. But above all else, I think that the characteristic that is most readily apparent when we look at Mercedes is her consistent underlying kindness and compassion. Throughout the entirety of the game and the majority of her support conversations, you can see that she is a caring and warm-natured person, and that really shines through. And so, in turn, the vast majority of her decisions are made with the people around her and their well-being and emotions in mind. I think that the most distinct and my personal favorite example of this is when she's talking to Dedue in their C and B supports. If you're not familiar with Dedue's backstory, essentially he's one of the only surviving individuals from Dusker, a country whose people are hated in Fargus because of their involvement with the murder of Prince Dimitri's parents in what's known as the tragedy of Dusker. And the reason I felt it necessary to briefly explain this is simply because of Dedue's origins in Dusker, several people in the monastery hold unbridled prejudice towards him. But Mercedes, in their C and B supports, makes a point not to let this cloud her vision of him, and in fact actively strives to learn more about the religion and beliefs of Dusker. She shows a clear compassion and acceptance of Dedue and his people, even encouraging him to share his culture and beliefs with more people, even though it doesn't necessarily align with her own, ensuring that he knows that she doesn't see him as the enemy of Fargus like a lot of people see him, and kind of like he sees himself. She understands these beliefs are important to Dedue and doesn't want to see them fade away from the world once he's gone. I think this illustrates how she can make decisions based on not only her own point of view, but other people's as well. This in addition to her A support with Annette, where she apologizes for dragging her down in the previous social link, which ended in a fight. This desire to make amends with her friend in a very tactful way really leads me to believe that she leans much more towards a feeling type than an intuitive type. But this apology also points towards one of the downfalls of her being a feeling type, in that she puts much of the blame of this fight onto herself. Now, I'm sure we can all see how this can be a double-edged sword, but I'm going to take it a bit further than simply a fight between friends. If you meet all of the criteria in the game, you can unlock a special cutscene where when the Death Knight is finally killed, we learn that he's truly been Mercedes' brother Emile the whole time, whom she has spoken of so affectionately clearly while talking to characters like Felix throughout the course of the game. If you're able to trigger the cutscene, then you will see Mercedes leaning over Emil's body as he slowly dies, placing the blame onto herself for not doing enough to help or not saving him while they were younger. She asks for forgiveness for not going that extra mile, and honestly, when I first saw this scene, it made me really sad because we know that it's not in any way her fault that this situation has occurred. Mercedes has had a tough life, to put it lightly, since her father, Baron Martritz, died, being taken in by House Bartels essentially just for her noble blood, then being seen as expendable once Emil was born, leading to her and her mother to leave House Bartels and live in a church, until Mercedes is eventually adopted by a commoner. With all of this in mind, it's incredibly unfair to herself to take all the blame for this situation, because in reality, there was so little, if anything, she could have done, even if she wanted to, in order to save Emil. But this tendency to care to a detrimental degree and invest too much of herself into a situation that she has little control over is very characteristic of a feeling type. But now we've kind of reached the tough part. To close out her personality type, we need to figure out whether she aligns more with the judging type or the perceiving type. This is something I struggled with going back and forth for a while because there are genuine examples of her aligning with either side within her support conversations. But as I continued to look into it, the more I realized that based on the generalized traits that the Myers-Briggs Foundation used to describe judging types, this is honestly the antithesis of Mercedes. Judging types tend to prefer being very orderly and having their time very well planned out, feeling more comfortable once decisions are made, and bringing life under control as much as possible. And while on the surface this kinda makes sense with the very religiously devout Mercedes, she admits herself in her C support with Byleth that she is constantly misplacing things, mixing up dates for drills, and just how her mind can be so naturally scattered as she's advising Byleth not to push themselves too hard. In reality, she's just much more of a free-flowing spirit than she is focused and organized. I mean, if we just look at her C support with Hilda, where all Hilda does is ask her to help out a bit with the greenhouse, Mercedes just drops what she's doing to not only work on the greenhouse for Hilda early in the morning, but she stays there for a long time, going way above and beyond what she actually needed to do. Not only does this add to the idea that she's very much a feeling type, making the decision to help a stressed out Hilda who's running late for a meeting with Byleth, but in going way past what's needed, she even loses track of time until it's almost lunch by the time Hilda comes and finds her. This very free-flowing and relaxed demeanor just screams perceiving type, as people with this personality attribute in general are more flexible and are likely to take unexpected opportunities when they come along. So since Mercedes tells Hilda that she enjoys working in the greenhouse, it's little wonder that she jumped on the opportunity. But like with every other aspect of personality, one piece of evidence just isn't enough. So I think that the nail in the coffin has to be looking at her interactions with an actual judging type and how they differ in attitude. So let's just take a second to bask in this interaction between her and Ignatz.
Are you sure you want to wait? I can hear the professor calling.
We're not needed until after the lunch hour. We have plenty of time.
Oh, I guess so. I was just panicking a bit. I wish I could be calm like you. How are you so unflappable?
Well, rushing around doesn't help, does it? I mostly try to stay out of everyone's way. There's no point in overexerting yourself. Anything that needs doing will get done eventually.
Huh. So that's the secret to happiness.
I suppose, but it's not nearly as philosophical as you make it sound.
No, it's perfect. I feel like I don't quite fit in with other people. So in situations like this, where I have to talk to someone, I panic a little. Please, teach me how to be as calm and collected as you are.
She is so incredibly unbothered by the idea of taking her time and moving at her own pace, lying in stark contrast with Ignatz's much more anxious demeanor. She's so casual in this scene, and I almost feel as though they had this support conversation specifically to highlight just how laid back she truly is by contrasting her with someone who's much more rigid in nature, which is why I have no doubts in my mind that she is a perceiving type. And so, with all of this in mind, this leaves us with the conclusion that Mercedes is an ISFP, which is briefly described within the actual Myers-Briggs type indicator as being someone who is quiet, friendly, sensitive, and kind. They enjoy the present moment and what's going on around them. They like having their own space and to work within their own time frame. They're loyal and committed to their values and to people who are important to them, but they dislike disagreements and conflicts and don't force their opinions or values onto others. And this description definitely boils Mercedes down to the core attributes of her character beautifully well. As an introverted feeling type, she won't typically open herself up fully and completely to someone straight from the get-go. She'll need some time to warm up as she gets comfortable with someone, as we can see very clearly in her supports with Sylvain, where as these conversations progress, she is able to be more and more honest and understanding with him, slowly opening up about her own life experiences as he shares his. In essence, Mercedes is driven by her ideals and loyalties, as can be seen in her incredible faithfulness and trust in the goddess, and her willingness to accept her status as a commoner, even though she was initially born to nobility. Though her insistence to live according to her values should not be confused with being closed-minded, because she isn't. She constantly keeps an open mind and actively wants to hear and understand other people's perspectives, even if they may differ from her own, like we see in her interactions with Dedu when they talk about faith. It's this tolerance and understanding, when combined with her free-flowing and idealistic nature, that really defines Mercedes and is what really sets her apart from the rest of the Three Houses cast. While she may seem understated at first glance, she's an absolute wealth of knowledge and kindness for so many characters throughout the game, and shouldn't be overlooked. But that will do it for today's video, guys, and I want to pass 2 questions off to you today. Do you agree or do you disagree with my assessment of her personality type? And what's another character that you'd want to hear me cover in one of these personality of videos? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, why not liking this video, why not subscribing to the channel, and why not even ringing that notification bell so you never miss another upload? And why not even sharing this video wherever you like sharing things, because it's always so appreciated. But as always, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, a fantastic rest of your week, and why not even a fantastic rest of your month. And I will see you in the next video. Later.